Good morning. My name is Joseph Citro, and I am chair of this meeting today of the Livable Roadways Committee. May we have roll call, please?
Chair Citro,
Yes, ma'am.
Cal Hardy,
Here.
Christine Crespo Valentin,
Yes, here remotely.
Una Johnson,
Here.
Julie Ham, Mark Hudson, Michael Marino,
Here.
Melissa Colazzo, Peter S., David Hay,
Here.
Emily Hinsdale,
Here.
Chris Thompson,
Here remotely.
Larry Josephson, Richard Rank, Karen Kress,
Here.
Matthew Lewis,
Here.
Hart Representatives Scott Drainville, Bobby Edwards.
I'm
I
here.
believe I saw you online. Jason Jackman.
Here.
Catherine Coyle,
Here.
Arizona Jenkins, Carlos Ramirez,
Present.
Sarah Hendricks,
Here.
Anna Quinones, Robert Fry, Brian Ramirez, Christina Steffen,
Here.
Sandra Piccirilli,
Here.
Matthew Pleasant, Amber Dickerson. I believe we do have an in-person quorum, and I do need to let you know that there are some members participating virtually because of medical reasons in the local declaration of emergency. And for recording purposes, please identify yourself when you're speaking.
Thank you very much, Ms. Torres. This meeting on January 26, 2022 is now in session. First, is the volume that's coming through, is that a level that everybody is okay with, or would we like to turn it down a little bit? We're good with it. Okay, thank you very, very much. Ms. Torres, is there any public comments?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, then can I ask everybody to please rise for the pledge of allegiance? Pledge of allegiance.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Torres, our first action agenda item is election of officers. Would you please give us an intro to that?
Mr. Chair, do you need to approve the minutes first?
Oh, you are correct. I'm jumping way ahead of myself. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from December 15th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Who made the second? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Motion by Marino.
Motion made by Ms. Marino, seconded by Mr. Ramirez. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed online? Let the reflect.
I do not see any chat.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that the motion has passed unanimously. All right. Now let's go to our action agenda item of election of officers. Ms. Torres.
Yes, perfect, thank you. So every year, in the beginning of the year, we look at our election, our slate of officers, and allow you all to make changes if you desire. Your chair will, of course, continue to be Councilman Citro, but we have two other officers, both the vice chair and officer at large, that we will take action on. I believe that both of these folks have indicated they would continue if you decide that is, if you'd like them to continue in those positions. But so we will first take nominations for vice chair. I don't need a second for this, but is there a nomination? Can I hear a nomination for vice chair, who is currently David Hay?
This is Marino. I nominate David Hay for vice chair.
Second? Do we second it?
Go ahead.
Chair, are there any other nominations for vice chair?
I see none in this room.
Can we have a motion, please, to support the nomination of David Hay to continue as the Lower Roads vice chair?
May we have a vote on whether or not Mr. Hay is going to continue as vice chair? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ms. Torres, is there any opposition online?
No, there are not. There's nothing there.
Then David Hay, the motion is passed unanimously. Let the record reflect. David Hay, I'm afraid that you have to serve yet again as vice chair of this committee.
Thank you, everybody.
I'm sorry, and if I speak over you, I'm so sorry. It's a little hard to hear. The second officer is Officer at Large, currently Catherine Coyle. So can we please take any nominations for Officer at Large?
Is there any nominations?
I'd like to nominate, this is Karen Press, I'd like to nominate Kathy Coyle to remain in position.
Great. Are there any other nominations?
There's been a motion to have Ms. Coyle as our at-large. All in favor, say aye.
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 Is there any opposed online? Hearing none, seeing none. Thank you very much, Ms. Coyle. You get to serve yet again
Thanks, everybody.
as at large. Ms. Torres, is there any other?
There's no other business with the election of officers. I do have the next item when you're ready.
Please, if you will.
Okay, so every year we also do evaluate the attendance of our members for all of our committees. And the Liverpool Roadways Committee doesn't have anybody that's, well, we have nobody that has missed more than 2 meetings without having been excused. So that's great. So we don't have any problems there. The only position that's been really hard, Lisa said, for her to get somebody to fill is the transit user representative. We'd like to continue to find somebody to serve in that position, but for the time being, Lisa has asked that you all consider vacating it. It doesn't mean that position is removed from the bylaws or, that can be filled at any time we find somebody. So we don't have to go through the TPO board to add that person back. But if there is, unless you can think of somebody that you want to call and check on, and we'll leave it as it is, if you would consider vacating the transit user position, it makes it a little easier when we were trying to reach a quorum. But everyone else looks great as far as attendance.
Any discussion? Any suggestions? Ms. Torres, does anybody online have any comments or questions?
No, I'm sorry. No, nobody online has, someone congratulated David, but that's it so far.
I will entertain a motion for, at this time, removing that position.
So moved, Karen Press.
Second, Michael Marino.
Ms. Kress has made a motion, seconded by Mr. Marino. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there any opposed online?
No, there are none.
Let the record reflect that it was passed unanimously. Now, it is just for at this time, Ms. Torres, and we can always bring that back after we get past this COVID crisis.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for your understanding. Ms. Torres, we're going to be having an update of the safety targets.
Yeah, that is true. We have Connor McDonald from our staff that is going to make a presentation, and I've handed over controls to Connor.
Thank you, Gina. I'm just sharing my screen now. Let me get it pulled up. Can everybody see the screen and hear me all right?
Yes.
Perfect. So I'm Connor McDonald. I also have Johnny Wong here with me and Gina Torres, who may be able to answer some questions later. I'm here to present the 2022 safety performance targets. So the background of this is that MAP 21 legislation requires TPOs and state DOTs to track performance for each measure listed on this slide. We as an MPO are required to track the performance. In years past, the MPO has elected to track year-end fatality total and motorcycle fatalities as additional safety measures. This is the 7th year we're setting targets. Additionally, the process requires that we set realistic data-driven targets. So our methodology is as follows. We project the number of crashes for the next given year and subtract the crash reduction benefits that are achievable given the anticipated level of investment. This crash reduction is to expect a 1% reduction along all crash types. For the first target, we are reviewing annual actual fatalities. This is a record high in 2021 at 255 crashes. With trend prediction at 1% reduction factor, we are predicting no more than 253 fatalities, or we hope to set a target of no more than 253 fatalities.
Can I just stop for a second? Sorry, this is Mike Marino. Gina, can you minimize the GoToWebinar block because it's cutting off part of the slides on our end? Or I don't know if that's something we can do in this room.
That would actually be my screen, I believe. Let me see if I can minimize it.
Might be an hour.
Yeah, you want to check? You just need to pull the other screen to the left. There you go. Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Did that work with what you did on the podium?
Yeah, we got it. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So for the next target, let's see. The next target, annual fatalities on a 5-year rolling average. Since this is an average over 5 years, the number is not expected to decrease, but we hope to set a target of no more than 224 crashes on a 5-year average, on a 5-year rolling average. This map shows where fatal crashes occurred in 2021. As you can see, they are along much of the major roadways, especially the east-west corridors. The third target is motorcycle fatalities on a 5-year rolling average. For this, we are predicting a decrease in that average with a target of no more than 36.13 on a 5-year average. The fourth target is annual serious injuries on a 5-year rolling average. This has been steadily decreasing, and we're proposing a target of no more than 1,107 serious injuries on a 5-year average basis. Next is the annual non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. Based on the statistics, there's an increase in the 5-year average. We are proposing a target with no more than 232 non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. The sixth target is fatality rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled on a 5-year rolling average. Since we don't have reliable volume data into the middle of the year, we have predicted a 1.03 growth rate in VMT. Overall, we are proposing a realistic data-driven target of no more than 1.59 fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled on a 5-year average basis. Our final target is a serious injury rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. We have seen a steady decline in this trend, and we're proposing a target of no more than 7.49 serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled on a 5-year rolling average basis. This next slide is showing where we did and didn't meet our targets in 2021. We set a target of no more than 190 fatalities, annual fatalities, but the actual number was 255, so we did not meet that target. The next was a 5-year rolling average of fatalities. We set a target of 195, and the actual was 212, so we did not meet that target. Serious injuries, 1,201, with the actual being 1,025, so we did meet that target. The motorcycle fatalities, we did not meet that target. The set was 34.95, and the actual was 37.20. Non-motorized fatalities, we met this target exactly at 230. The fatalities per VMT from 100 million VMT, we set at 1.38 and the actual was 1.51, so we did not meet this target. The serious injuries per million vehicle miles traveled, we set it at 8.49 and did reach the target 8.17. So this slide shows what we currently have, what we can do. So currently there are Vision Zero's 4 action tracks. There are short-term, low-cost treatments like Paint Safe Lives. There's equitable enforcement, so consistent and fair enforcement. Public engagement strategies, One Message, Many Voices is an example project, and policies and programs. The future will not be like the past. So in the future, we'd like to ask you what crash details the TPO staff can provide to assist in making informed data-driven decisions and recommendations to the board. This next slide, I want to show 2022 performance targets just on one slide so you can visualize them. So annual actual fatalities, no more than 253. Annual fatalities on a 5-year rolling average, no more than 224. Motorcycle fatalities on a 5-year rolling average, no more than 36.13. Annual serious injuries, no more than 1,107. Annual non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, no more than 232. Fatality rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled on a 5-year rolling average, no more than 1.59. And finally, serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, no more than 7.49. So with that, the recommended action today is to approve the calendar year 2022 safety performance targets and forward to the TPO board. And the second, also to address the high number of fatalities by submitting suggestions to improve performance in high crash areas. At this time, I'd like to take any questions or comments.
Is this the end of your report, Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Okay, and I thank you for that. Before we go into comments and questions, I just need to make this statement that the improvements that this board has sought for has saved lives. I can't express enough that one death is too many. We are at acceptable levels, but is that accepted to us as a committee, as a board? Now I'd like to start in on comments and questions and see if there's some things that we might be able to set to TPO that might lower these standards so that we can get to our Vision Zero dream that we have. Anybody would like to start this off? Ms. Hendricks.
Thank you. This is Sarah Hendricks. Thank you, Connor, for your presentation. I guess two things kind of jumped out at me from your presentation. One is the statement about the 0.93% crash reduction factor representing the annual reduction achievable given existing funding. So that jumped out at me, given existing funding, as identified in the Vision Zero Investment Program 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan. And so of the 4 major goals, Vision Zero gets 6%. So one of the things that we could do, the TPO board could do, is allocate more funding to our goals to drive fatalities and serious injuries down to 0. That would include more major investment in projects with a design priority to reduce speeding. That was the second thing that jumped out at me. I guess it was a US DOT observation that one of the leading contributors to these crashes causing fatalities and serious injuries is speeding. So if we can choose more projects with a design priority to reduce speeds and then tilt that balance to the advantage towards more people using alternative modes, including transit, bicycling, walking, and developing our facilities for managed lanes, I think that could do a lot towards reducing speeds. And I think in the packet, there was information about some of the upcoming investment opportunities, federal funding coming down, the TRIP money, the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program funds, transportation alternatives. So there's a lot of opportunity for the TPO to do that.
Oh, good noise.
Well, the only way you
There is
can,
none.
the only way you can do that is penalize people feelings, it's driving down the road. I can only think, let understand these people are Asians, side by side on the 275. They have no regard for protections, cars. So we need to penalize the people who speaking, who calling these actions. If we want the way to bring down the president.
I agree with you. Enforcing our laws, penalizing the people that are doing wrong. I agree. All right, Tom. Other comments, questions, please? Ms. Kress?
I would just like to echo what Ms. Hendricks and Mr. Jenkins just said. It is kind of ironic that we state that Vision Zero is, kind of our ultimate goal, but the way the funding is allocated is not. I don't know why red light safety cameras aren't a thing. I don't know why no right on red isn't happening. It just feels like there's some no-brainer things that might not be politically popular with the masses of the driving public, but it shouldn't be politically popular that people are dying on everyone too. So I know it's tough, but I don't think that the solutions are unknown. Just someone has to have the guts to implement them. The fact that we have neighborhoods without sidewalks, schools that don't have, schools is a whole other subject, but we just have to have the political will to get it done. And I don't mean to look at you when I say that because you're a leader in this, but.
No, please, my finishing statements, go ahead and go that. Mr. Hardy?
Yes, on the slide that you have up now, talks about the funding levels for different priorities that we have. The one thing I'll say, I do believe that the agencies do a good job of adding safety features when they do state of fit repair projects and resilient projects. But perhaps there's some way we can that can be scored as well when considering those projects. The safety features that are going to be included within maintenance projects could be used to look at to provide safer roadways.
Let's go with Ms. Hinsdale first.
Yeah, I would just to build on what Cal was saying, there are plenty of opportunities where we are putting in, say, a new water station or making repairs to our stormwater drains where we are not also at the same time then using that opportunity to put in a sidewalk or to create facilities that are safer for walkers and bikers. I think every time we make changes to our community, we have to look at it through that Vision Zero lens and not keep putting Vision Zero in a little category off on the side of a tiny percentage. It should be the first overall picture as we approach each project, because there are so many lost opportunities you can see around the city. Projects that are going on right now that are missing opportunities to put in safer access for everybody.
Shut.
So basically what I was going to say is our first reaction would be with any project is how does this meet our Vision Zero plan? If it doesn't, if it skimps a little or there's something better that could be implemented, what do we do then? If it's not able to reach our Vision Zero ideal scenario, does it stop? Does it pause? Does it rethink? So I feel like, yes, we're all going to think about this as Vision Zero, but in reality, what are the implications if it's not the true vision? That's my conundrum with this presentation, because we all want that, but what's next?
Ms. Coyle?
I think I agree with everybody. That's kind of the missing piece is we're up at this higher level talking about this stuff at a policy framework and funding, and it's much at this higher level. That's got to trickle down into the design manuals and the regulations for the people that do design projects. And I'm pointing to Cal not calling you out, obviously, because you do a really good job at it. But as, having left the government, as people leave, if the rules are not stable and easily readable and understandable, when people change, they're gonna change how they review things, how they do things, how they design things. You can't leave it up to just the benevolent person that's in the job, that's on the committee and doing a great job and designing good projects if it's not actually entrenched in the institution and the rules that that person's following. Then when that person leaves, it's on to the next thing. So we can keep throwing money at it, but it has to trickle down all the way. I hate to say trickle down, but it has to get all the way down so it becomes the rule book, part of the rule book in everything that we do. That's why it's kind of ironic that we're missing the transit user on our committee.
I know.
And you see the biggest allocation is for economic growth because we all want economic growth. But on its face to a layperson, what is that? It's like bigger, faster roads so I can get more traffic. Does that have anything to do with safety? I don't know. How do we make sure that that Vision Zero isn't just a bumper sticker? And with sidewalks, we want sidewalks to connect everything. We have ditches throughout this city, everywhere. The only way you're getting sidewalks on those streets is to improve that stormwater, period. We do, I have it now, I work in the private sector, but we do houses in South Tampa everywhere in the flood zones, and there's ditches that we're spending lots of money to fix the ditches, and we're spending money to put in trench drains and new driveways for houses, because we're spending the money to dig out the ditches as opposed to maybe spending a little bit more piping them and putting in sidewalks because there's no other place to put the sidewalks. So it's taking that one extra step. And maybe that is part of economic growth. Maybe that is part of good repair and resilience, but it also feeds and bleeds over into Vision Zero. And we account for that better than we account for that. There's got to be a way to measure that more, because there probably is more than 6%, but there's bleed over between these that we're not seeing also. I don't know. I'll get off my soapbox.
Well, let me go to Mr. Marino, Mr. Morales, and then back to yours. Is that good?
Thank you. Yeah, this is Michael Marino. I just in terms of the presentation itself, the fatality map. I mean, it's terrible to talk about something that's called a fatality map, but nonetheless, if possible, I mean, I don't know if this lives somewhere where it's easily accessible. You know, maybe a slightly larger version or one that can be zoomed in. I know I see, you know, Dr. Long's on the line. I've previously spoken to him about the West Shore area, and you can see some of those dots around the airport. You know, that's Dale Mabry and Boy Scout, and obviously Hillsborough Avenue is notorious from end to end. So if possible, it'd be nice to have that type of data more easily accessible instead of just getting it on the slide. But it's good that was included. The other comment I wanted to make, and maybe this goes to Kathy's comment about the design manuals and things like that. My sort of road pet peeve was the improvements that were done on South Dale Mabry, south of Gandy Boulevard, where there were median closures, there were turn lanes put in, they removed landscaping the city of Tampa had put in and replaced it, and they sodded it in some places. But the thing that really got me was they had, in my opinion, they had the space for bike lanes and they didn't put them in. They also added a mid-block crossing, an area where it's desperately needed. However, that intersection desperately needed a traffic signal based on the several accidents I had seen there, crashes, I'm sorry, that I had seen there in my time of living down there. And, you know, I think our friends at FDOT have done a much better job than in previous years in terms of thinking of the totality of a project, making sure it fits all users. But the fact that that project was able to go forward without any sort of understanding of the heavy pedestrian use and transit use in that neighborhood, and basically building a commuter road in a densely populated area, an area where there's populations in need, both from an economic standpoint, an age standpoint, and a language standpoint. I just don't understand, and I apologize for being on my soapbox about that, but that to me is a clear example of they've narrowed the medians by 3 feet. they would have had full-blown protected bike lanes possible, and that was not done. And, you know, there's a high school there, major Air Force base there. It's an important area of town, but it doesn't get as much credit because of the population that's directly on Southdale Mabry are not the people who go to public meetings, unfortunately. So that's my point. Thank you for my time.
Maybe some of the money that we have should be better at engaging people. Because you're right, the influences that get that design that way
Yeah.
are the big users, not
Yeah.
the people that live around there.
And, you know, the curbs, the exterior curbs did not move. It was the medians that could have moved. And I know that project is probably like 2 years old now. I think they started public hearings right before COVID started. But that to me is an unfortunate example of the project is being done and that little extra 10% could have made it 100% better.
Excellent point. Ms. Hinsdale. I mean, Mr. Ramirez, sorry.
Being in the trenches as a transportation traffic engineer, you know, we do look at Vision Zero, and that is, safety is something very paramount that we do take into account in our design. However, there are certain limitations that we have due to either funding, because we don't have money to buy right away and create wider sidewalks. And a lot of times we also have a lot of public opposition, believe it or not. Personal experience in my own neighborhood, we were working with a developer. They were going to put sidewalks throughout wherever we wanted them. They wanted to be able to put them in there. I got so many calls from certain blocks in my neighborhood saying, we do not want sidewalks. We refuse. I don't care what you do, just don't put sidewalks in my neighborhood. I think adding funding to projects definitely is good, and we do improvements with the surfacing, every road lighting, we've done these street projects. And those might not be counted in strictly Vision Zero category, but there are other categories that we are putting that in. But funding is definitely something that we need to do better improvements, because, you know, we might want to do a full traffic signal block, but we don't have the funding to do that. So we will do as good as we can, which might be, you know, our Ps or a hop or something. Well, I mean, we'll get to the hop, might as well do the signal. The other piece, I think, and going to Ms. Coyle's comment, is education. We have to educate the next generation of engineers, planners, city, you know, city leaders to understand that safety is paramount. That way, when somebody does leave who has that mentality, the next one has it. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen people leave, and then the next person comes on. It's a completely different night and day. I will say, fortunately, with the city of Tampa, it's getting better and better and better. It seems like this new generation behind us has taken those things, but we need to continue that to make sure that we go into the schools and let everyone know how important it is to have safe roads, and not just that, but be a respectful user, respectful of other users on the road, like sidewalks, bike lanes.
Arizona.
Two of the problems that I see when it comes to sidewalks is they put a sidewalk on one side and not on the other side. Like the Boy Scout, that maybe, get on this side, but not on the other side where the bus stops, when they go. So you gotta go all the way to the mall, and something on the other side to get on the level. That's one problem. The other problem is when you request for funding for a sidewalk, it's not our easement, it's hotline. So you're gonna get money for hotlines. But the hotline they know is the city. Who cares what side it is? Just put get money and put the sidewalk down.
Sorry.
Just a few things. Since COVID, the construction costs have gone through the roof. So everything that we're saying kind of tends towards that, like state of good repair stuff too, just to kind of put that in perspective too, where our construction costs they're very variable too. That's the problem. It's really hard for us to really plan things because we get projects that are coming in 30, 40. We had one bid that came in, the lowest bid was 6% over the estimated construction costs. So everything's variable. We have labor shortages and everything else. It's hard to get contractors. I'm having trouble finding contractors to build sidewalk right now, and I can't find anybody to commit to that. So it is important that when we get our shot at a roadway to really try to make it safer at that time. And then to echo Carlos's statements, but to also add the public. We need public education spending on Vision Zero and to let people, because every time we go out, we get the same arguments over and over again. And it's you kind of throw your hands up because it's like you're saying the same thing over and over again, and people don't understand something that is honestly not intuitive because it's not something that is, I think people drive every day and they think it's planning and engineering is self-evident because they drive, so it's common sense knowledge. But a lot of time traffic doesn't work like that. And I always kind of say it's like, just because everyone has to relieve themselves doesn't make them a wastewater engineer. So it's kind of the same thing. So it's one of those things where you have to kind of spend that time to kind of educate and say what our priorities are and let people know how bad the problem is. Because I think that's the other thing is our crash statistics that we have. Yeah, they're bad and everybody's run up on that bad crash every now and then. But to be honest, it's few and far between when you actually look at how many times you actually drive. So you don't really put yourself into that position until it happens to you. So I really want to kind of stress the public education portion of that, and whether through advertising or anything like that, I think that would be a very good use of our money to kind of look into more of that campaign. So.
Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Kress.
I agree that education is important, but I don't know that our goal is to make people happy or win them over. If our goal is not to have people dying or serious injuries on our roads, and I think that there's been enough proof that traffic actually will still flow and the road's not going to end. Like at some point, like someone's just got to get the grown up in charge and say, sorry, teenagers, this is what's best for you. I have teenagers at home, so I'm used to this. And then I just could, as far as the measurement goes, I just want to put in a plug for the fact that we do a great job counting cars, but we're not really spending much time or money on counting people, who are walking and biking. We're working with DOT Central Office, Michael and Wade Reynolds at the TPO and a couple other people trying to get like a pilot program going, but it would be helpful to have those stats over the years on how pedestrian traffic and bicyclist traffic is fluctuating, hopefully increasing.
All right, we have been talking amongst ourselves at the in-person quorum. I know there's people on our public comment and that are online. Does anybody have any comments or any questions or any suggestions?
So, Chair, are you directing that question to me? If you are, David was seconding Karen's points. I guess he was appreciating what he was hearing there. If I can have the floor now, or would you rather wait till after you have some other comments? I would like to just address a couple of these topics.
Ms. Torres, thank you. Is there anybody online that has any comments? Then, would you mind, Ms. Torres, if I make a couple comments?
I wouldn't mind. So as you guys, most of you know me, and know that this is what I've been focusing my career on the last, handful of years, and it's disheartening and it's heartbreaking to continue to see this rise. So you may want to tune in to the February 9th TPO board meeting, because after these committee presentations, I'm taking notes with what you guys are saying. Thankfully, it's really supporting a lot of the things that I plan to share with the TPO on everything that you've said. This is a systems approach. The biggest thing about Vision Zero, one of the biggest points to note is that we recognize that humans make mistakes. We drive our cars almost subconsciously, and we don't have a forgiving roadway system that if a mistake is made, you know, that a person can actually survive. So we have lots of things to do, education as well. So I have some points I'll be making at the board, but I really like what I'm hearing. I feel like, tell me if I've summarized one particular point about additional funding and how that little arc that we had, you know, showing the percentages, if maybe the TIP prioritization include Vision Zero or Vision Zero type safety improvements in all of the categories, and maybe those get prioritized higher if they're both a, you know, state of good repair and have a safety benefit. So just some things like that I'm going to ask the TPO board to look at. You know, I think we should focus on the top 50 now. We've done quite a bit on the top 20 high injury network roadways, and really use some of these creative designs. They're national best practices. They're not, you know, something that isn't safe to use, and really encourage our roads to be designed that way. There's some funding, a little bit anyway, with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. There's a couple grants there that I think our staff can start working with other staffs to come up with some grant proposals so we can use some funding from that. I just have to be, you know, I just have to feel confident that we're going to do something this year, just so that we can not be discussing this and seeing such a great increase next year when we look at these safety targets again. But anyway, there's some outreach things I'm going to suggest to the board that maybe their agencies help us every month. You know, we post something on our social media or hold some event, you know, that we can just draw more attention to what Vision Zero means and how everyone can play a part in making, you know, everything safer. So I'm really thankful for what I'm hearing. I took some other notes down and plan to use some of the things you're saying at the TPO board.
Does this committee feel comfortable with what Ms. Torres has already told us that she will be presenting from this committee? Do we want to make any other recommendations from this committee?
Mr. Chair, this is Matt Lewis. How are you doing?
Doing fine, thank you.
Okay. I just put it into the chat, but I don't think anyone has a chance to read it. When we look at the arc of categories, and I think this has been said, but I want to reiterate it, the $32 billion being spent, all of that should be Vision Zero money. State of good repair, it's easy enough to make safety improvements when you're restriping a road, real choices when not driving, major investments for economic growth. This looks like Vision Zero is an afterthought, when Vision Zero should be an overriding principle that permeates every one of these categories.
Matt, thank you. And then, you know, I don't know if you remember this, I guess it was back, Johnny may have presented this in October, the change of how we do our TIP, but we added equity to all of the categories, and why not do the same? So I'm willing to bring that forward to the board and see what they say. And I did leave one thing out, Chair, as far as being kind of, you know, evaluating how we do, we are going to recommend or suggest to the board that we have a kind of like a mini summit at the end of the year, and ask each of those jurisdictions that have a high injury corridor in their, you know, that they're responsible for, to tell us what they did this year along, or what they plan to, you know, what's in the works. Maybe they didn't complete that project, but they have something, kind of hold the feet to the fire, honestly.
That is a great idea. Ms. Hinsdale.
If we're looking for a specific comment from this committee to be shared with the TPO, think what everybody's comments are. I think it sounds like what we would like to say as a group is that Vision Zero needs to be applied in every category. Safety needs to be considered for everything. If we're looking at economic growth, how does this reflect our safety goals? If we're looking at good repair and resilience, how does this reflect our safety goals? I mean, real choices to not driving is a little bit more obvious, but again, making sure those match up. That Vision Zero is not a category. Vision Zero is the goal. So I think that should sum up our comments from this committee.
Ms. Johnson?
With that, I guess there needs to be some, the accountability of, did you reach Vision Zero, why or why not, lack of funding, but, I mean, we have to go further than just say we look at it, but how do you look at it in every project? And if you can't do it, why? Or I just feel like we're gonna get into those scenarios, but there's gonna be a Vision Zero approach for everything. If it can't be reached, what's the next step? Do we say stop? Do we relook at it? Do we allocate more funding? So the accountability of not reaching 100% Vision Zero needs to be just thought about.
Is there a solid Vision Zero scorecard, like a project-based scorecard
I think that would be
that could
very
be developed or has been developed? That if this is the overarching principle, which I agree, because having it as a category does make it look like, we tried. But realistically, it is embedded in all of those, but we're just not capturing it. So is that something that we should recommend that they take some of that money to develop that? Maybe with committees like this to develop that?
Ms. Hendricks?
Yeah, I think this is Sarah Hendricks. I think what this shows me is that the overriding priority of the TPO is to reduce traffic congestion, given the amount of funding that's going into economic growth. I think if we look more closely at that, we would want to reduce traffic congestion for freight, for trucks, and for specific uses, but not necessarily to be reducing traffic congestion for private cars. Perhaps a performance metric that we should consider is travel time and equalizing travel time across the different modes. So in other words, for pedestrians, what kind of travel time are pedestrians experiencing? What kind of travel time are bicyclists and people who use public transit experiencing? I think we try too hard to deliver high-speed travel, and we encourage just a sense of entitlement that because I have a car, I have a right to go fast. I think we need to be thinking differently about traffic congestion and thinking of congestion more as a tool that can be harnessed rather than something that we need to be constantly fighting, constantly adding more lane capacity. But we're never going to catch up with that. I think we need to shift our priorities. And if we do that, we reduce speed by harnessing traffic congestion. If we reduce speed, we're going to drive down fatalities and serious injuries. I think a lot of this stuff is interrelated. And I think a starting point is to look specifically at that green part where we're spending so much money there.
Mr. Chair, you have someone in the chat that would like, has their hand raised. I don't know about in the room if you have people waiting, but Roger Henderson would like to share a comment.
Yes. Good morning. Thank you for recognizing me. I moved to the area last year. I'm an engineer and a planner with about 40 years of experience in road design and a lot of complete streets experience. And I agree with just about everything that's been said. I wanted to add one new idea. And this comes from, again, 40 years of going to public meetings as an engineer, having to defend my design work. And there are some people in the community, and community with a small c, it's everywhere, that just wear you out. They are like bulldogs on your ankle. And, you try to say the road will be safer if we lower the speed. And they look at you like you've got two heads on your shoulder. So my idea is to have a group of people from the leadership, and I consider this committee part of the leadership, and then others who are, very good at talking to people and explaining these kinds of projects, and then let the engineers do their work so they don't have to keep going to these meetings and saying the same thing over and over again. And I think I'm so impressed with the work going on in Hillsborough County and Tampa. Paula Flores is one of your consultants. She does amazing work. And you guys are on a great track. Thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you for being here for that comment. Is there anybody else online, Ms. Torres?
No. Oh, there is? Or I didn't see. Someone else does want to speak. Please state your name.
This is Larry Josephson. I also am an engineer who has about 40 years of experience. I work in the technical services division of the technical services division. Basically, I'm responsible for writing and updating the manuals. We are take Vision Zero very seriously in the jobs that we design, and in all the projects that we look at. But sometimes you can't design for people that make mistakes. We've had a couple serious motorcycle accidents recently where people were, not driving according to the laws and rules of the road, and they hit objects because they were driving precariously. Some things you can't design for. And there has been a lot of said about money and so forth. We have an enormous backlog of intersections that we have to do improvements, resurfacing projects. We're looking at doing, about 10 to 15 resurfacing projects a year. We refresh the pavement markings, bring those up to current standards, and all the time looking at concerns of Vision Zero. So Hillsborough County, and I know the city of Tampa also does great work, like the cycle track and different things where we're trying to put in facilities for bicyclists and pedestrians. We're adding raised crosswalks with RRFBs, that's the rapid flashing beacons that you see to allow pedestrians to cross. But all this takes an enormous amount of money. Just for instance, I believe on sidewalk repairs, we almost have $100 million of backlog in sidewalk repairs. So the money that we get is like a drop in the bucket, and we only can target, the highest priority projects. So that without sufficient funding, it'll take a long time to make all the improvements that need to be made. So just get kind of a background of what we do in Hillsborough County, and there's an enormous backlog and minimal funds. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. Any final comments? Any closing, Mr. Hardy?
Just one more, it's also about getting smarter with our funds. We can, on roads that don't need to be resurfaced, we can do quick build projects and things like that. So there are opportunities that, where if you have dedicated funding sources for those type of projects, then they become, they can kind of get prioritized for roadways that might not be in a bad condition where we can make wholesale changes to them. So that's all, just trying to get a little bit more smarter with the limited funds that we have now. And I agree with Larry there about trying to get more money. So that always helps. So that's it.
All right. John, please.
Again, they can do all this money and all this stuff, but if we don't tell the people who are out there in the road who causing these accidents to slow down, you get them when you get it. That is a bunch of money being wasted, time being wasted, people are losing their lives because they want to go out and have a drink and get behind the wheel. If you want to drink, no drive. If you want to have like an ass, no drive. get on the bus. You can get where you're going. There's no hurry. What's the hurry? Slow down. People can, because it's raining outside. It's raining outside now. Why would you fly on a railroad? Slow down. Get there when you get there.
I agree completely.
Yes, we are an instant society. We want things done yesterday. Thank you, Arizona.
As an aside, speaking of motorcycles, I'm not blaming motorcycle riders. My parents are
Hey,
motorcycle
hey,
riders.
hey, hey,
Sorry, but literally every motorcycle I see is weaving in and out of traffic.
same with every bicycle.
They're not, I know, it's a lot, it's true, it's true.
And I
I saw one just the other night on Boulevard in Laurel, a guy on a dirt bike, not even licensed, does a wheelie all the way down the middle of the street, right past a cop and decided to turn left. Didn't follow him. It's unbelievable.
Last go around. Any more comments or questions? Then
I'm sorry, I just want to, wait, what? I apologize. The point about measuring Vision Zero, there's a project that, to FDOT's credit, they're now looking at signalization at Boy Scout in Manhattan. The city staff and the MPO, TPO staff got that into the tip. It was put in as a signalization. If you looked at it from a Vision Zero perspective, it would be a different prioritization. There's been, as far as I know, four fatal incidents at that intersection just in 2021. So if you were to measure more of this by Vision Zero, I think you accomplish some of the other goals, but it would change the rankings, I think. And I think that might be hard for other people to understand, because you may have to tell a neighborhood, your project has to wait because your intersection is actually safer. Even though it's congested, your project, your area is safer.
Nobody's
than
dying.
Other neighborhoods over here.
I cannot make any type of motions. However, Ms. Hinsdale's idea and thought, when this gets presented to the TPO board, sounds as the best comment that we as this committee would like to make to the TPO board concerning this report. Is that Vision Zero should be the top priority in anything that is done within our transportation around this area, within Hillsborough County.
As an overarching guiding
It's
principle.
whoever has that put in the chat there is because that's good wording for it. The overriding the top area.
Let's just listen. I didn't even read it.
Right, who wrote that, that's well stated. Is that not Louis? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, then, is that our comment to this report? Brilliant. Thank you, Ms. Hensel, thank you, Matt, thank you, everybody, for doing that. I'm just going to throw in my 2 cents worth on this, and I'm going to start out with a constituent that called me and told me that she did not want her street repaved. She begged me, please, because the moment that street is repaved, the traffic speed is going to go up by 10 miles an hour.
Potholes or traffic calming?
So are brick streets. You made a statement that I'm pushing very hard for. No right on red, unless you have an arrow for that. You don't have any traffic accidents, how many pedestrians, how many bicyclists are involved in that. Again, you took the bicycle course. Thank you for doing that. I went online and I was amazed what I did not know. I was amazed. I was also amazed at what bicyclists don't know either. To your point about motorcyclists, yes, you got bad people that drive motorcycles. I will attest to that. I'm not one of them. I'm not. I'm not. I'm not a bad bicyclist either. To your point, Arizona, we can't stop people from doing the wrong things. We just can't. I hate to use this phrase. You can't fix stupid. And there are some things But yes, I often hear political will. We need to start having public will. And my last statement, and I don't fault any governmental entity, I don't fault any boards, I don't fault anybody. But with every project for public mass transportation, local governments are responsible for putting up 25% of the funds for that public mass transportation. This county has been woefully underfunded. Yes, I understand that. But all for transportation did not pass. With hope, it will pass November. If it doesn't, we better have an exit strategy on how we're going to have funding, not only for our transportation, but for our sidewalks and for our roads. It's out there. I just threw that out to the universe. Secondly, if we want to have public mass transportation in denser areas, we have to reduce the parking minimums. How are we going to get the people that are living in the denser areas to give up their cars and use our transportation to get to and from work if they can still have 2 cars? Again, just throwing that out to the universe. Everyone, thank you for your opinions. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for what we're going to tell the TPO board. Ms. Torres, is that?
Well, I'm sorry, we do need action for the safety targets that have been presented by Connor. I think, Connor, could we put those back up on this screen, or did you lose having controls of the presentation? Do you need it again? There you go. Do you guys?
Yeah, perfect.
I move to approve the performance targets moving them forward to the TPO board.
Let's take it then.
We have a motion made by Ms. Coyle, seconded by Mr. Jenkins. Ms. Coyle, is that with the caveat of the recommendations that we have made?
I was thinking that was going to be under number 2.
Okay, okay, you're fine then. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Ms. Torres, was there any opposed on our website?
No, there aren't. And if anyone wants to speak up just virtually, you may. Cool.
Let the record reflect that the motion passed unanimously.
Chair, if I might, before, I'm assuming it's going to be Ms. Hinsdale that makes the motion. With the recommendation of it being the overarching principle, which I wholeheartedly agree, I think we lost one piece in it, the discussion, that it becomes measurable. We don't want it just to not be a category anymore and it's a guiding principle, and then there's not a way to hold all the categories accountable to those principles. So that's the only caveat I would add.
Had a good addition to that. So is that what we need, is a motion to reflect that as our comment?
If we want to make a formal suggestion, I think, yes.
So I would make a motion that the Livable Roadways Committee would comment to the TPO that Vision Zero should be an overriding principle about a topic area of each of the other 4 categories should also be contributing to safety, and that built into this should be metrics for concluding whether Vision Zero goals have been accomplished for each of these items.
Second, Marina.
Okay, the motion was made by Ms. Hinsdale, seconded by Mr. Marino. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Ms. Torres, anybody online?
There are no obvious opposition. There's nobody voted anything.
Let the record, excuse me, reflect that the motion passed unanimously. Thank you all again for that.
Thank you.
All right, we have, what do we have next? Old business, Ms. Torres?
That's correct. And Johnny's going to talk to you all about just a couple of things in that item. And I think he's online now.
Good morning, Mr. Wall.
Good morning, Councilman. Hope you all are doing well. Good morning, committee. Just have a very quick update. Back in December of last year, DOT made the announcement that there are some funding opportunities available now the Surface Transportation Block Grant, which is a portion of funds that the TPO controls. Transportation alternatives, that funding bucket is typically used for projects that are alternatives to single occupancy vehicles. So that amount of money can be used to fund things like bike lanes, multi-use trails, sidewalks, so on and so forth. Transportation Regional Incentives Program, and I believe that that is it. There is one thing to keep note of, and this is more for our agency partners at the staff level. Applications for funding need to be submitted to the MPO by March 4th. The funding cycle closes on March 6th. We have to receive your applications by the 4th. That gives us 2 days to complete the applications and rank them according to our prioritization criteria, and then submit them on to DOT. We don't have much flexibility this year in terms of the deadline. In years past, we've worked with you on a one-on-one basis. If you were missing any information, we would work with you to resolve that and then send it off to DOT. But the new submission website is all digital and online and hosted in Tallahassee, and it closes on the 6th, and we're not able to open it up. So we have no flexibility there. So we're going to be working with you and making sure you have that date marked and highlighted and circled in red on your calendar, because you don't want to miss it if you want to have any of your projects have a shot at getting funding this year.
Any comments or questions for Mr. Wong? Mr. Wong, thank you very much.
All right, thank you all.
Ms. Torres, is there any more business before us today?
There is not. There's just a couple items in your packets to look through at the addendum, and that's all.
When is our next meeting?
Put me on the spot. It's the 4th Wednesday of February. Let me see if I can. Well, can anyone do that faster than I did? Because I closed everything on my computer, so I didn't share.
Fourth Wednesday of February 23rd. All right, thank you.
New business.
New business, please.
I was asked by the city's attempt to help with the motorized scooters. They are all being in the middle of the sidewalk. So the lady from the city, Raquel, one minute asked me to help them find any other scooters in the middle of the sidewalk. So if you see any other scooters, can you email me the locations and what kind of scooters are they? So I can give it to the lady.
Okay, so you're asking for the amount of scooters that are on the sidewalks, who the scooters belong to, and you need that information so you could deliver it to a woman with the ADA. Okay. Are you asking Ms. Torres to see if Ms. Silva can get that information for us?
I think if you like, you all around, the names and where did you see it at?
Yes, you're asking all of us to help provide that information? Yes, sir.
You can email me at A Jenkins 52.
A Jenkins 52. Okay.
At TampaBay.com.
Did everyone get that? Thank you, Erica. Any other further comments, questions on new business, old business, new business?
The police plan is people not locking them up.
I would like to see if I can get some help. I want to introduce to the city a copy mimicking the Miami ordinance were that if it is electrical or fossil fuel, any vehicle that is not ADA compliant, that is motorized, should not be allowed on the sidewalks of the city limits of Tampa, including mopeds, motorcycles, all-terrain vehicles, these electric EV bikes, which can get to speeds 28 miles an hour. It is my opinion that those should not be allowed on the sidewalks. Scooters are mandated to ride in the bike lanes now. And it's going to come to a head when someone gets hit by one of these vehicles. First people they're going to look at is the city of Tampa. So
I agree with that.
I'd like to see if we maybe could put that on the next agenda item or some agenda item further down the line.
Now, can you clarify then the not ADA compliant?
88 compliant motorized is fine, but any other vehicles that are motorized should not be allowed on the sidewalks. Any other comments, questions? Without objections, we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
One last thing. I want to thank all of you in this new year. Y'all are not paid for this. You're all doing this of your own accord. You're volunteering, and I thank you for being part of this committee. We're adjourned.